केंद्रीय मंत्री डॉक्टर जितेंद्र सिंह, जो एक राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर जाने माने चिकित्सक और मधुमेह विशेषज्ञ भी है, उन्होंने कहा कि टाइप 2 डायबिटीज़, मिलेटस और कई अन्य जीवन शैली संबंधी विकारों को नियंत्रित करने के साथ साथ ब्रेस्ट कैंसर सहित कई कैंसरों को ठीक करने के लिए शीघ्र पता लगाना महत्वपूर्ण है। द वीक कनेक्ट कार्यक्रम में एक्सपेंडिंग ब्रेस्ट कैंसर केयर फॉर इंडियन वुमेन शीर्षक पर बोलते हुए डॉक्टर जितेंद्र सिंह ने कहा कि प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी का स्वास्थ्य, युवाओं और महिलाओं पर ध्यान केंद्रित करना ब्रेस्ट कैंसर से निपटने के लिए सबसे अच्छा कदम है, जो दुनिया भर में और भारत में भी महिलाओं में सबसे आम घातक बीमारियों में से एक है। उन्होंने कहा कि स्तन कैंसर अनुसंधान में काफ़ी प्रगति हुई है।
We are still there, though all kinds of colors are available in the market now, so you can choose to look grey, white, black, anything. So now that is another challenge. When we look forward to the growth of India, consistent growth, how best do we channelize these two segments of population? So in case of breast cancer, for example, you are actually somewhere connecting with both. If you prevent it, because it's something which is more often said to be happening relatively at a relatively younger age, you could conserve the youth. And if you are conserving the youth, and I have seen most of the women who get an early detection of a disorder like a breast cancer and get cured for it, they otherwise become conscious of their health and tend to lead a more energetic elderly life. So you are actually addressing both the graphs of this biphasic life cycle which is being witnessed in India today. And I think we would like to have more of an interaction rather than one-way monologue. But the prevention is now going to be the core of it. And for that, whatever means, of course, by publications, by infographics, I think the best medium would be the media which is understood by the population today, whether it's the social media, whether it's infographics, whether it's jingles, and also getting out of some of the social taboos of not disclosing a disease you have or being embarrassed about it, and also about the virtues of yourself, examining yourself every day. So these are some of the issues which, as I said, we have. It's a multifactorial subject, not necessarily related to a medical professional alone, and that's why we need to have a joint and a very integrated and a holistic approach from the West. And we were always known to be dabbling with the diseases which were related to poor hygiene, poor nutrition, everything related to poverty. So now we have heart attacks, we have diabetes, we have cancers, also because when we have started living long enough to get all these diseases. Like a Nobel Prize, to win a Nobel Prize, first you have to be working consistently and then you have to live long enough, because you don't get it posthumously. So by the time you get it in your 7th or 8th decade, you have to be around, to pick it up. So similarly, at the time of independence, most of the mortality happened. The lifespan of an average Indian was hardly 50 or 55. The other day at a gathering of pensioners, I was saying, because they came out with a lot of grievances related to them. I said, first of all, you must thank God that you have had a good farewell at the time of superannuation. Because we have seen those times when God would not let you wait for a superannuation day. So from 55, now we are almost nearing 70. We were hardly 50 years, the average lifespan of an Indian around the time of independence, and now moving towards 70 and all that. So, and at the same time, with the advent of newer antimicrobials, antibacterials, antibiotics, we have largely got over the communicable diseases, infectious diseases, except for this mishap that we had in the form of pandemic, which took us back to those times. So now many of the malignancies, of course, breast cancer is relatively at a younger age, but many other malignancies which were not happening and not known because people didn't live long enough, like for example prostatic cancer in males, etc. So these are now the challenges. And when we talk of India, in the context of India, and also the present government as she referred, and with Prime Minister Modi's focus on health, also on women welfare, and also on youth. So I think all the three things get addressed when we talk about a subject like breast cancer. So I hope I have tried to vindicate what I said in the beginning of. So first of all, why are we talking about breast cancer? Because when we talk about breast cancer, we are simultaneously talking about the well-being of a woman. We are talking of the well-being of, or a conservation or preservation of the youth energy, because that would be the phase of it. And at the same time, we are also addressing a foundational health-related issue. And as we know, the overall mortality, because this is also considered one of the preventable or curable, if not preventable, maybe curable malignancies, but even then we have about 35-37% of mortality in this country, which is lesser than the global mortality of about 30%. And he was referring to the research being done. I think the research is not in isolation, because when you are addressing or looking at a problem like malignancy or breast cancer, it has to be a multifactorial, because the outcome or the genesis is also multifactorial. No doubt, of course, he referred to my portfolio, so I can take pride in saying that our lab in Lucknow, which is the Central Drug Research Institute, is deeply involved in conducting research on some of these drugs which could be effective. So also many other laboratories. We have a IIIM, the Indian Institute of Integrated Medicine in Jammu, which is dedicated more to the herbal medicines and also said to be working on some of the antioxidants and other compounds which could have a preventive role in the genesis of. But that apart, I think that we have to have a wider integration of approach, which mercifully and ironically COVID taught us. Because when you are faced with the threat of death, you learn to learn what you didn't want to learn. And many in my own fraternity did not think much about the indigenous methods of medicine. And even, we looked at some of these Oriental methods with a certain degree of contempt or cynicism. But you saw during pandemic some of the best of the physicians from Europe and America calling up their counterparts over here and asking them, is there a booster in homeopathy? They are so desperate. But that taught us the virtues of holistic approach. So that is A. So we have to have an integration of all the systems of medicine available, ranging from Indian to Chinese to allopathy to Ayurvedic, and also yoga. Because now the focus is going to be on the prevention part of it. And incidentally, this is one of the problems, this is one of the issues which is amenable to early detection, if not fully prevention. And that is something which is, I think, the mandate which the organizers also must be holding in mind to carry out these camps, and also self-inspection and all those things which you tend to teach the young females. So one is the holistic approach. The second is a wider extended approach, which also would involve the society. Also involve some of the cultural customs. Often there is, in a country like India, I think another attribute to the COVID and the pandemic, and also to Prime Minister Modi, is that he awakened us to the virtues of preventive health care. And there is also a legacy to that, because in a country like India, where you can hardly afford even treatment for a disease that you are already known to be having, it's difficult to enjoy the luxury of going for preventive health care or preventive checkups. Like the area that I am dealing with, as you was mentioning, diabetes, we usually expect the patient to have protracted medication or even lifelong. And I would see many of my patients would skip medicine for 2 days in a week. Some of them would make a calendar scheme into 5 days in a month. And I would find one of my junior residents scolding him, कि अगर दवाई नहीं खानी थी तो आए क्यों, मेरा टाइम क्यों वेस्ट किया. Then I would quietly call them and tell them, look here, a person who doesn't have anything else has tremendous amount of self-respect. So he doesn't want to disclose to you, but that must be the problem. So in a country where you have to skip a meal to have a drug, it was never a part of our culture. Many of us fell sick. If we got well, it was mother's blessing. If we didn't get well, it was Pishle Janam ka karam. And we happily reconciled to it. So gradually now that the socio-economic levels have also risen and this COVID has also awakened us to the virtues, because can you imagine a country where we hardly thought about prevention? We are the first to have produced a COVID vaccine, the DN vaccine, and gifted it to the rest of the world. So that's something miraculous happening. So suddenly, because we inherently had that resilience within, but we didn't have the resources to express it, or the luxury to express it, as I said. But now gradually, as we move on to be a part of the global world and also look forward to playing a global role in more ways than one, as you've already seen happening in the sector of space, and also to a great extent in the sector of health, because as I said, you are the first one to have covered with the COVID vaccine, and so many other vaccines also now. You also have a nasal vaccine for COVID. So we would have to live up to those benchmarks, which are global. Secondly, when we talk of 2047 century India, and when we talk of India having more than 70% population below the age of 40, I think the other challenge would be how to optimally channelize the energies of our youth, or the 70% population, both male and female, because if you have to reach that pedestal, it has to be contributed to each and every citizen. So how far or how affordable it would be to allow the youth energy of these women, in this case, and youth in general, to get squandered at the altar of some of these disorders, which could have been prevented, or if not prevented, which could have been checked or cured at the early stage, but which were not done so, and they went on to debilitate the individual. So this is not only a loss of the individual per se, this is a national loss in that sense. So that is one aspect that we have to, because when we are visualizing India in that position, we have to take it also that way. Secondly, when we talk of India being a country of 70% below 40, let's not forget that even the percentage may be below 70, but the overall number of plus 60 is also on the increase. So it's I would say it is a biphasic lifespan. It's not that 70% are below the age of 40 and the elders have agreed to quit the planet.
डॉक्टर जितेंद्र सिंह ने बताया कि विज्ञान और प्रौद्योगिकी मंत्रालय के तहत CSIR प्रयोगशालाएं भारत के कैंसर अनुसंधान प्रयासों में सबसे आगे हैं। डॉक्टर जितेंद्र सिंह ने आंकड़ों का हवाला देते हुए कहा, भारत में 2020 में स्तन कैंसर से 37% महिलाओं की मृत्यु हुई, जबकि एशियाई दर 34% थी, जबकि वैश्विक औसत 30% था। उन्होंने कहा कि भारत में स्तन कैंसर से उच्च मृत्यु दर देर से हुए निदान से संबंधित हो सकती है, जो मुख्य रूप से उचित जागरूकता की कमी और जोखिम वाली आबादी के लिए स्क्रीनिंग की अनुपस्थिति के कारण है। उन्होंने इस बात पर जोर दिया कि आयुष्मान भारत दुनिया का एकमात्र स्वास्थ्य बीमा योजना है जो पहले से मौजूद बीमारी के लिए भी बीमा कवर लेने का विकल्प प्रदान करती है।